What's going on, guys? This is Still Gaming. Welcome back to another episode of the Pasta Show. So today I'm going to be reading a creepypasta called the Spartan. It's a Halo 3 creepypasta. So yeah, let's get this episode of the Pasta Show started. I was considered a Forge artist. On Halo 3, I'd always go into Forge and create the best custom maps with maps like Foundry or Sandbox. I always knew about the ghosts that appeared while playing Halo 3, but knew what triggered all of them. Auto grenades were caused by throwing grenades before going into monitor mode, and extra unanimated players during matchmaking were caused by players attempting to join while there was lag in the connection. Secretly, I always hoped one would show up, but I was never genuinely scared by the scenario. One day I had what seemed to be the best idea for a Foundry map. A glitched map. A massively distorted map. As soon as I got the idea, I immediately charged my Xbox 360 and pressed the power button. When the Halo 3 logo appeared, I noticed an anomaly with the startup. It didn't say I was signed into Xbox Live. I wasn't bothered by it, so I simply pressed the guide button to sign in, but noticed a glitch when the guide opened. Apparently I had 0 gamer score, no achievements, and no display picture. This sort of gamer tag glitch was not uncommon. I knew I just had to sign out and sign back in, so I pressed X to sign out. However, this was not as simple procedure as I thought it would be. As soon as I pressed X, the console froze, so I tried every button on the controller to get it going again. After a few seconds of wailing hopelessly on the controller, I heard a heart-stopping static blast from the TV for one split second. Upon hearing the sound, not only did I fall out of my chair, but I brought the chair down with me. I lifted myself up and peered over the chair to see the guide flickering every few seconds. So I lifted the chair back up and went to restart the console. Upon startup, the ring quadrant around the power button lit up, but afterward one of the lights started flashing red. With an angry grunt, I looked up at the screen expecting the worst, which was just what I got. The screen displayed in black with an error message in several different languages with E74 and a large digital type at the bottom. "Dang it!" I exclaimed, as I hastily stood up to walk back to my chair. When I sat down, I stared at the screen for a while. Though after what seemed like a half minute, I noticed something. The type on the screen was faintly flickering. I stared at the display, wondering what it was for another few seconds until the type completely distorted and disappeared. I looked at the console, and the light had stopped flashing, so I figured the console pushed the panic button and shut down. But then it started up again. But instead of green lights spinning once around the quadrant and illuminating all at once, the lights were red. I looked up at the screen, and the startup was otherwise completely normal. So I thought, until the startup animation finished. The Xbox 360 logo cut off out that same static blast for the same amount of time. But there was type on the screen I didn't expect. When the Halo 3 logo faded in, I realized, like many subliminal messages, it was short enough for me to completely read in the split second that it was there. In Times New Roman type, the message was "Turn back." In great bewilderment and confusion, I sat there in my chair, not knowing what to think the message was alluding to. "Nexus Hub, now signed into Xbox Live," bleeped a message at the bottom of the screen. Getting over the jolt that the static gave me once again, I relaxed in my seat under the impression that everything besides the quadrant was normal until the message changed. Before the animation shuffled itself into nothing, the Xbox Live message suddenly turned into the same message as before, "Turn back." The font was very real and legitimate and could not have been hacked. Again, I was left confused. Why was my console telling me to retreat, especially in such strange ways? It wasn't near Halloween or April Fool's Day, so it was totally beyond me. As the menu appeared on the screen, I once again attempted to forget everything bizarre that was happening. I selected Forge, then for map, Foundry. The loading process was totally normal. A scoreboard appeared in front of the map, then I finally spawned. After I spawned, I noticed another thing that was off. I spawned with an assault rifle, but instead of having the normal 32 round magazine, it was nearly doubled to 60. I fired the weapon, and the sound effect was not of the Halo 3 assault rifle, but rather the very hollow, exploding sound effect of the MA5B assault rifle from the original Halo Combat Evolved. This is where I decided I had to get this recorded. I paused the game and ran upstairs into my room to retrieve my capture card headphone splitters, and laptop. After collecting all the materials, I ran back down to the basement and began setting up. I connected the 2 audio, 1 video to 1 jack in each splitter, and the same in the other jack of each splitter. 1 RCA set went to my capture card, which was connected to the laptop. The other came from the Xbox. All the software was open. All I needed to do was connect each splitter to the correct RCA jack in the TV. Upon plugging in the final splitter into the right channel audio jack, knowing the video looked normal, everything changed. Deep static blared from the TV as everything went a dark shade of red, accompanied with an old-fashioned film grain. This time I had no logical explanation or room for tolerance. I stared in subtle horror at the screen for a few seconds before coming to the conclusion that, whether I had an explanation or not, I had to get the world to see this. I crawled to the laptop and pressed record on the software. However, as soon as I did this, the video and audio returned to normal. This didn't matter to me, as I was sure more was soon to happen. I pressed up on the D-pad to go into monitor mode and floated to the center of the map. Then suddenly a freight truck in the back of the map exploded into a small mushroom cloud, launching a bridge above the truck to be launched to the top of the map. In the strangest display of virtual physics, the bridge reflected off the ceiling from a vertical launch. It's almost completely lateral, as it rebounded and charged straight at me, causing me to explode on impact. I stopped being scared by it and was just glad I got it recorded. Upon respawn, I went into monitor mode and dropped an arsenal of weapons around me. Then went back into player mode and equipped myself with a shotgun and a rocket launcher. With the shotgun drawn, I began making my way to where the explosion happened. When I got there, everything was as was except the bridge was missing. Then suddenly what was almost certainly a blast from a Spartan laser came from thin air by a crate beside the freight truck. It was aimed straight at me and I was killed. When the scoreboard faded in, I saw clearly that there was no one else in the server. It was only me on the scoreboard. Maybe, I thought, I finally encountered a Halo 3 ghost. Well, that would explain the Spartan laser shot, but most certainly not anything else. Again on respawn, I went into monitor mode and made my way back to the site. This time it did look like an explosion that had happened, but not in any realm of video game physics. It was a hyper-realistic representation of an explosion site. There was a gaping crater in the floor with its edges glowing. The freight truck was right beside the crater and was crushed with a large chunk of it decimated. The crate that was near the site had also had a quarter of it missing. And besides that was the bridge in 6 free-form pieces. The physics engine did not support one of these sites. This environment was indestructible and the objects cannot possibly be destroyed in such a detailed fashion. I saw a Spartan in the gaping hole in the crate. His armor was completely green. No weapon, arms at his side. He was standing completely still as if part of scenery. I inched closer to him, then decided to spawn a shotgun on the ground below me. After doing so, I switched back to player mode and equipped myself with the shotgun I had created. I then slowly stepped toward the Spartan. As I was crossing the edge of the crater, inching ever so close to him, he slowly started turning his head towards me. Startled, I stopped. He turned his head slowly until his sights were dead on me. From then on, every move I made, his sight followed. Feeling too frightened to drag this on, I ran straight up to him. We stared right at each other for quite some time. Neither of us did anything. And finally, as an experiment, I decided to melee him. When I did, blood splattered on the floor and crate walls behind him, more than I expected for a Halo game. At the same time, he let out a violent and blood-curdling scream that was filled with anguish, but his body still did nothing. Not a second after his screaming, I noticed something. I recognized that voice. That voice belonged to one of my best friends, Tony. I never once heard him scream like that, but would know his voice anywhere. I simply stared at the screen. I didn't know what to think, what to do. A mysterious character that suddenly appeared in a private server I created just shrieked my friend's voice. How is this even possible? A few seconds after the melee attack, the Spartan suddenly stepped forward, lifted his right arm behind him, and speedily smacked me with what seemed like full force. It was a one-hit kill, but what really surprised me was that the one hit sent me flying across the map and smacking right into a wall. When the scoreboard faded in, instead of saying Red Team at the top of the chart, it greeted me with a vaguely familiar message, "Turn back now." Now it was with more of a sense of urgency as the word now was added. Am I really doing something I shouldn't? Is something terrible really going to happen if I continue? I decided it couldn't hurt to see what would happen for the next couple of minutes, despite how terrified I was. I once again spawned a shotgun and then made my way back to the site. I got to the hole in the crate and he was still there, standing still staring at me. Only this time his chest was bleeding through his armor voraciously. The blood dripped down to his knee and the actual cut was dark and disturbing. We again stared at each other until the fear of this Spartan overtook me and I shot him in the head. Expecting it to be a normal Halo death where nothing happens except him falling down, I was greeted with a graphic and disturbing image. His helmet was seemingly disintegrated and his head was blown to small pieces. Dark and photorealistic blood splattered all over the crate walls behind him, accompanied with soft tissue, presumably green, and skull smacked up against the walls. His neck was completely red, veins and arteries sticking out at varying degrees, and I could see his spine sticking up from the back. Every second blood squirted from his neck, and I saw one of the most graphic deaths I'd ever seen in a video game. I literally could not believe my eyes. I would never expect such a disgusting display in a Halo game, or any game for that matter. Nothing was ever bent on being this realistic. I hadn't even seen this in movies. The Spartan dropped to his knees and fell to the ground. I followed him as he fell, and as soon as he hit the ground, blood sprayed from his neck and covered both the ground and my player's legs. Instead of the normal Halo announcer, I was greeted by a horrifying demonic voice saying, "Game over." Again, when the scoreboard appeared, it did not say "Red Team" at the top. The text was replaced with "How could you?" and my score was negative 250. The menu loaded again, and once again I was petrified by the image I saw. Normally in game menus in Halo 3 there is an image of the Master Chief at the side with the Arbiter standing behind him. Instead was an image of Tony, black eye sockets, loose skin, looking skeletal, and bleeding from every orifice. Behind him was what looked like an image of me glaring angrily. I was staring right at myself from the television. I suddenly remembered that I had been recording all this time. I crawled to my computer and saw that the preview window still showed the paralyzing image that was on the screen. I pressed stop and the video was immediately saved. The preview image for the saved video also showed the hyper-realistic explosion site from my aerial monitor view. However, when I opened the video, it was just black with white text and Times New Roman types reading "Turned back," accompanied with loud static. A few seconds after opening the phone started ringing. I was paralyzed with fear upon hearing the startling sound, but rushed to answer it. It was my mom, panicking. "Jake?" she asked, sounding more worried than I ever heard her. "Yeah, Mom," I replied. "Jake, Tony's dead." I nearly dropped the phone. Dead? His mother found him decapitated in his room with blood everywhere after hearing him scream violently. My heart was pounding, eyes were wide as I could make them. I could not find the will to speak. They found a gash in his chest too. It looked like the butt of a gun. Gash? I suddenly remembered everything I did to the Spartan. It was Tony. The Spartan was Tony. "Honey, I'm sorry. They're looking for whoever did this right now. I'm on my way home. I know how this must feel." The phone slipped out of my hand and fell to the floor. The words could not be removed from my head. I killed Tony. I killed Tony. I killed Tony. I killed Tony. Suddenly the television screen blacked out. It was the same situation, black screen with a message in white and in Times New Roman type. Only this time instead of static, it was a deep and loud buzzing noise. The message read, "Failure. That word will haunt me until my dying day. Failure." Alright, that was a long creepypasta, but I think it was worth it. There were several cliches, such as, including but not limited to, hyper-realistic blood. That's it. There were also other cliches, kind of like things happening in video games that happen in real life. But I think it was still pretty well written. I mean, considering all the cliches it had, it was a very well written creepypasta. So I'll probably give it about maybe a 6 or 5 out of 10, maybe 7, 8. I don't know, somewhere in that area. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this video, hit that like button. And if you like this series or any series on my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I always like cheeseburgers. If you like this creepypasta, leave it in the comments below. And if you would like for me to read a certain creepypasta, leave that in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.